The highway stretched endlessly into the darkness, illuminated only by the twin beams of my headlights. It was the kind of night where the stars were hidden behind a veil of clouds, leaving the world beneath them in an oppressive gloom. I was returning home after a long day, exhausted, but eager to collapse into my own bed. My car was my sanctuary on nights like this, a small bubble of light and sound cutting through the void. The low hum of the engine and the occasional crackle of the radio filled the silence. Yet, as I drove, an odd unease crept into my chest. It wasn't the kind of fear that hits you suddenly. It was subtle, like an itch at the back of your mind. The air inside the car felt heavy, almost stifling. I chalked it up to fatigue and tried to shake it off, focusing on the road ahead. The empty highway began to play tricks on me. Shadows seemed to flicker in the periphery of my vision, though I saw nothing when I turned my head. The feeling grew stronger, gnawing at the edges of my sanity. Finally, I spotted the comforting glow of a gas station sign in the distance. The idea of stepping out, even just for a moment, felt like a lifeline. As I pulled into the station, I didn't realize I was holding my breath. The gas station was a relic of another era, rusted pumps, peeling paint, and a flickering neon sign that buzzed like an angry wasp. Despite its dilapidated state, the place felt like a refuge from the oppressive darkness of the highway. I parked by the pump, stepped out, and stretched. The cool night air hit me like a splash of water, momentarily clearing the haze of exhaustion. I reached for the nozzle, but before I could start filling the tank, the attendant appeared. He was an older man, with a weathered face and eyes that seemed too alert for this time of night. "Late drive?" he asked, his voice raspy but friendly enough. "Yeah," I replied, trying to sound casual. "Just trying to get home." He nodded but didn't leave. Instead, he lingered, his gaze drifting past me toward my car. Something in his expression shifted, a flicker of concern, maybe even fear. "You know," he began, hesitating, "you've got someone in your back seat." My heart skipped. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard him. "What?" "Yeah," he said, more firmly now. "Saw her plain as day when you pulled in. Sitting right there." He pointed directly at the back seat. A cold wave of dread washed over me. I turned slowly, peering through the window. The back seat was empty, just as I'd left it. "There's no one there," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. The attendant frowned, his brow furrowing deeply. "You sure about that?" Looked like a woman to me. Long hair, sitting real quiet. I tried to laugh it off, but the sound came out shaky. "I think you're mistaken. Maybe it was a shadow or something." The man didn't laugh. He simply shrugged, his expression unreadable. "Could be. But, you be careful out there, all right?" I nodded quickly, desperate to end the conversation. As I finished refueling and got back into the car, I couldn't shake the sensation that his eyes were still on me. Driving away from the station, I glanced in the rearview mirror. The back seat was empty, as I knew it would be. But the heavy feeling I'd had earlier had returned, stronger this time, and I couldn't help but glance over my shoulder again. The road seemed darker now, as if the gas station's dim lights had been the last barrier between me and the void. The hum of the tires against the asphalt, once a comforting rhythm, now felt too loud. I adjusted the rearview mirror, more out of nervous habit than necessity, and froze. For a split second, just the faintest, fleeting moment, I thought I saw something. A shape, indistinct and shadowy, where there shouldn't have been one. I blinked hard and looked again. Nothing. "Get a grip," I muttered to myself, gripping the wheel tighter. My nerves were shot, and the attendant's words were still circling my mind like a vulture. The air inside the car grew heavier, almost suffocating. The faint scent of something damp filled my nostrils, earthy, like wet leaves or soil after rain. I cracked the window slightly, hoping for relief, but the smell lingered. Minutes dragged on, each one feeling like an eternity. Then came the sound. It was faint at first, a soft rustling like fabric shifting. It came from behind me. I shot a glance at the rearview mirror again. Nothing. But the sound persisted, growing louder and more deliberate, as if someone, or something, was moving. Panic began to rise in my chest. It's just the car, I told myself, though I didn't believe it. Something in the trunk. Loose luggage. Nothing else. But when I checked the mirror this time, my heart nearly stopped. A shape, a woman, was there. Faint, almost transparent, but unmistakable. Long, dark hair obscured most of her face, and her body was motionless, folded neatly into the seat. I slammed on the brakes. The tires screeched, and my car jerked violently to a halt. My chest heaved as I turned around, fully expecting to see her sitting there. The back seat was empty. My breath came in ragged gasps as I tried to process what I'd seen, or thought I'd seen. The logical part of me screamed that it was exhaustion, a trick of the mind, but the unease in my gut told a different story. And then, breaking the silence, came a whisper.
Put on your seatbelt.
The voice was soft, almost gentle, but it sent an icy jolt through my body. I whipped around, searching the back seat again, desperate to confirm that I was alone. Nothing. Just the same empty interior staring back at me. The whisper came again, this time a little louder.
Put on your seatbelt.
My hands trembled as I gripped the steering wheel, every muscle in my body screaming for me to get out of the car. But I couldn't move, couldn't think. My gaze flicked to the rearview mirror, half afraid of what I might see. The woman was there again. Her features were clearer now, illuminated faintly by the glow of the dashboard. Her face was pale, unnervingly calm, with hollow, lifeless eyes that seemed to pierce right through me. She tilted her head slightly, her expression almost curious.
Put on your seatbelt.
Her voice was firmer this time, and the air around me seemed to compress, making it harder to breathe. My hand instinctively moved to the seatbelt, fumbling to pull it across my chest. As soon as the buckle clicked into place, the car jolted violently. The engine roared to life on its own, and the vehicle lurched forward, tires screeching against the pavement. What's happening? I shouted, my voice cracking as I fought to steer the car. The wheel resisted me, twisting on its own as if the vehicle had a mind of its own. The road blurred around me, the darkness outside pressing in from all sides. I tried to slam on the brakes, but the pedal didn't respond. Panic surged as the speedometer climbed higher and higher, the car hurtling down the highway at an impossible pace. In the rearview mirror, the woman hadn't moved. She simply stared, her gaze unyielding, her lips curling into a faint smile. Then, her voice came again, low and calm.
Do you understand now?
The car sped forward like a living thing, out of my control. My knuckles whitened as I gripped the steering wheel, my mind racing as fast as the vehicle. Outside, the black void of the highway stretched endlessly, the faint lines on the asphalt blurring together. Her voice broke through the chaos, steady and cold.
You ignored the signs. Just like I did.
What signs? I shouted, glancing at the rearview mirror again. Her eyes, dark and empty, locked onto mine. The seatbelt, she said simply. You take it for granted, don't you? Until it's too late. A chill ran through me. Her words hit with a weight that didn't feel random, as though she was speaking from experience. I don't know what you're talking about. I yelled, my voice shaky. What do you want from me? The woman's faint smile faded, replaced by a look of something that resembled pity. You should know what happened here, she said softly. On this very road. Just ahead. Suddenly, the car slowed, not gently but with a harsh jerk, as though an invisible force had slammed on the brakes. The headlights illuminated the road ahead, a sharp bend lined with skid marks and a small makeshift memorial, faded flowers, weathered photos, and a simple wooden cross. My stomach dropped. I'd passed roadside memorials before, always sparing them only a fleeting thought. But this one felt different. This is where I died, she said. Her voice wasn't angry or bitter, just hollow, as if the weight of her death had drained everything from her.
I was in a hurry. Just like you. too tired to care. I didn't wear my seatbelt. I lost control, and that was the end.
The pieces fell into place with horrifying clarity. Her presence, the warnings, the panic, it was all connected to this moment. "You don't have to end up like me," she said, her voice almost pleading now. "You can stop it. Just listen. Just care." Her words lingered as the car came to a complete stop, the engine falling silent. The air felt lighter, almost peaceful. But when I looked into the rearview mirror again, she was gone. Minutes passed, and the highway began to feel normal again, though my nerves were still on edge. The smell of damp earth that had haunted the car earlier was gone, replaced by the familiar scent of my worn leather seats. As I approached the next bend in the road, I instinctively slowed, careful not to take the curve too quickly. My headlights swept over another memorial, smaller, less ornate, but still a stark reminder of what could happen here. Her voice echoed in my mind, "You don't have to end up like me." I drove the rest of the way home with my seatbelt firmly in place and my eyes glued to the road. When I finally pulled into my driveway, the relief was overwhelming. I turned off the engine and sat there in the quiet, letting the stillness settle around me. The weight that had pressed on me all night was gone, but I couldn't shake the lingering feeling that I'd been given a second chance. As I stepped out of the car and looked back one last time, I thought about her, who she was, what had happened to her, and why she'd chosen me to warn. For the first time all night, I felt a strange sense of gratitude. I locked the car and headed inside, vowing to never take the simple things for granted again. The seatbelt, the road, the fragile thread that separates life from death. Somewhere out there, she was still watching. I was sure of it.